I have no idea how long he has been appearing in my room. My earliest memory of him was when I was about 8 and waking up to see him standing in the corner of my room. I began screaming my head off, and my parents and siblings came running in and switched on the light. I pointed in his direction, but they all looked so confused and claimed there was nothing there. He suddenly just vanished out of sight, and I was left shaking and crying. My parents assumed it was just a nightmare and let me sleep with them that night. He has been appearing in my room every night since then. Most nights, I sleep through the night, but I always have really bad nightmares for a few minutes each night. I woke up one night and saw him once again standing there. I turned on the light to get a better look at him. He was wearing a black 3-piece suit that looked like it had seen better days. A few of the buttons were missing and it hung awkwardly on him, as if he was wearing someone else's suit. His face was completely blank with no way to determine what he had once looked like. His hair was black that was starting to get speckled with a few grays. I know it seems crazy, but it felt like he was studying me while I was doing the same. He once again just disappeared. There was no flash of light or anything like that, as he just wasn't there 1 second. I went back to sleep and wondered what he was and if I was afraid. The next day, I was telling my 2 best friends, Chloe and Hannah, about him. The 3 of us were inseparable and we were regarded as the 3 Musketeers. All of our classmates used to joke that we were joined at the hip. Our parents ended up becoming good friends as we spent so much time at each other's houses. Neither of them believed me about him and demanded to stay the night. I was hesitant at first, but reluctantly agreed to keep them happy. We were all so excited and could barely sleep that night. My alarm went off at 3 a.m. and we sat there with giddy expressions on our faces. I watched as the faceless man once again materialized in the corner of the room. His appearance looked different tonight, as there was a red glowing hole on his face, and it always used to be expressionless. I was staring initially at it when I felt Hannah's arm try to grab onto me. She had a look of pure horror on her face as something was dragging her off the bed. Chloe was already on the floor and I could see her nails digging into the floorboards as she desperately tried to stop herself. The glowing hole on the faceless man's face increased in size and was now the size of a football. Both Hannah and Chloe were now on the floor and being forced towards the faceless man. He lowered his head to the ground and I watched the expressions of fear and pleading as my 2 best friends were swallowed up by the faceless man. He rose to his feet and then vanished out of sight. I sat there silently for a few seconds, processing what had happened, and then began screaming my head off. My parents came running into my room and I explained to them what had just happened. They looked at me like I had 2 heads and told me that I have never had any friends called Hannah and Chloe. The next morning, I went over to their houses and talked to both of their parents. They claimed that they never had any children by that name. I pointed out pictures of them on the wall and they couldn't explain why they had them up. Chloe's mother started weeping and she begged me to leave as I was upsetting her. I returned to school the next week and it was horrible. Everyone was making fun of me and calling me a loser for never having any friends. No one could remember my 2 best friends, even though they had known them for years. We moved out of that house the next year, and the faceless man came with us. I swore to myself that I would not let anyone else be harmed by him. I instituted rules with any of my future boyfriends that they are not allowed to spend the night with me. It ended up in a few breakups, but I wanted to keep them safe. The faceless man would still appear every night at the exact same time. My husband is okay with these rules. We live in a 2-bedroom house and he spends the night in the spare room. He knows I love him, so he does it to keep me happy. I was awoken to agonizing pain through my body and looked up to see the faceless man standing there with the glowing hole once again on his face. I looked around in confusion as my husband was away for the weekend. I let out a scream of pain as my insides felt like they were being torn apart. I looked down between my legs and saw a little hand coming out of me. The pain was unbearable and I was desperately trying not to pass out as I watched my twin sons being born. I only got to see them for a few moments as they were ripped out of me and consumed by the faceless man. I lay there covered in blood and felt the tears of anguish running down my face. I had only been 7 months pregnant and had never thought he would take them if they were still inside me. My husband and I broke up not long afterwards, as he couldn't understand why I suddenly decided I wanted to become child-free. It was the hardest decision of my life, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I now live alone and wait up every night to see the faceless man and wonder if someday he will decide to take me. Shout out to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacey, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I really look forward to making more content for everyone.